Hello, bhai. How are you? Uh, this series of lectures is meant especially for MSc second semester students, and the name of this series is Essentials Concepts, Essential Concepts in Toxicology. And I was going through your syllabus. I found that the most essential concept in toxicology that we are going to study is a mechanism. That mechanism is called as lipid peroxidation. Now look here, try to understand few good things. There is one mechanism of toxicity, we call it as lipid peroxidation. There is another mechanism of toxicity, we call it as oxidative stress. There is third mechanism of toxicity, we call it as apoptosis. There is another mechanism of toxicity, we call it as inflammation. There is another mechanism of toxicity, we call it as a cytokine reactions. So there are different mechanisms that finally lead to cell death. And the first mechanism that we are going to discuss is lipid peroxidation. Actually, lipid peroxidation is the process, and the manifestation of the process is through a different category of molecules, or we call them as atoms. And these atoms are known as free radicals. How we can define free radical? A free radical is that which is having unpaired electrons. These free radicals, or the generation of free radicals, leads to lipid peroxidation, that leads to oxidative stress, that lead to diseases like cancer, like Alzheimer. There are many other diseases, Parkinsonism, uh, all are related to this mechanism. And the science that deals with these free radicals is known as free radical biology. Or specifically, we can say that this is free radical biology and medicine. Free radicals, they have got a significance, chemical significance, they have got a environmental significance. They are not only important in toxicology, they are important in many other subjects. So we will start our discourse, our discussion first with free radicals. As I just said, free radicals are those atoms which are having unpaired electrons. Like this, try to understand like this. O2 is having paired electrons. When it becomes O, it becomes a superoxide anion, it becomes a free radical. Similarly, if it is carbon tetrachloride, it is having CCl4, and if it becomes a CCl3, it becomes a free radical. We classify these radicals like this. There may be oxy radicals, there may be carboxy radicals, there may be peroxy radicals, there may be alkoxy radicals. Try to understand in a very systematic way. When it is L, it is a lipid radical. When it is LO, it is a lipid oxy radical. When it is LOO, it is LO, it is alkoxy radical. When it is LOO, it is peroxy radical. Like this. So the chain continues like this. So there are others which are like this. Nitric oxide NO2 changes into NO, it becomes free radical. H2O2 is not a free radical, but it is a reactive molecule. Try to understand the difference between a free radical and a reactive molecule. Free radicals are those which are having unpaired electrons, and the reactive species are which are reactive, like H2O2 is reactive. When the Fenton reaction occurs, it changes into hydroxyl radical, more toxic radical, that is OH, and it occurs with the help of a reaction we call is Fenton reaction. So similarly, when the superoxide anion is formed, we call it as Haber-Weiss reaction. You can just note down these two reactions which are very important. One is Haber-Weiss reaction, another one is Fenton reaction. And these two reactions are the mechanisms by which the free radicals are going to be formed. So we shall be discussing them slowly, and you will be trying to learn them. The interest in free radical biology began long back when I was just trying to understand the mechanism. It so happened there was a paper was published by Recknagel and Ghoshal, and somehow we went through that paper, and I found that this is the real mechanism which leads to membranous injury or membranous peroxidation. When we say lipid peroxidation, it is membranous lipid peroxidation. Here we are to understand the membrane structure, we are to understand how this peroxidation occurs, and the reason behind this peroxidation is the free radicals. So you can ask, sir, how these free radicals are generated? Free radicals are being generated already in our cells, in our body, through endogenous, they are the endogenous products. There are many proteins, there are many lipids, there are many carbohydrates, they are being metabolized, and as a result of their metabolism, these free radicals are being spontaneously generated, and they are eaten up by the free radical scavengers already present in the cell, and the cell becomes normal. But when this cell is overwhelmed, overpowered by the chemicals, by the abuse, by the cigarette smoke, by the alcohol, by the pollution, by the drug that we have taken in the form of a therapy or so on, the result is that the cell becomes overpowered, overwhelmed by these radicals, and they start affecting the cell. They start making the cell, forcing the cell either to suicide or to die. If they force the cell to suicide, it becomes apoptosis. If they force the cell to die, it becomes necrosis. Simple. So, when we read that paper, before that paper also there was a paper which was written by Farber. Farber is a very good pharmacologist. He wrote an article, and the title of the article I still remember was Biology of the Disease. And in that biology of the disease, in that paper entitled Biology of the Disease, he discussed about this mechanism of lipid peroxidation, and then the following events and how this is related to other things. Then Recknagel and Ghoshal published a paper on lipid peroxidation. Then there are different schools in different countries. Say, for example, in England, Brunel University, in Department of Biochemistry, Professor Trevin Slater was talking of lipid peroxidation. In Italy, Dianzani was talking of peroxidation. In America, this is Recknagel who was talking of lipid peroxidation. So, in this way, the different schools in different countries, they started talking of lipid peroxidation. They started talking of free radicals, and very concisely, if you allow me to summarize all this, a very wonderful book came from Professor Halliwell, who used to work in Barry Halliwell. He used to work in England, but now he is the senior vice president of National University of Singapore. Halliwell wrote a very good book, and the title of the book was Free Radicals in Biology and Medicine. And that book revolutionized the entire concept of cell injury, the entire concept of cell death. He started with magnificent ideas, magnificent results that were obtained by his continuous experiments, and his supporters, Glende and others, his team that made Glende and others, they brought up a wonderful book. I read that book, and that book is present in our general library also by this title, Free Radicals in Biology and Medicine. And maybe the recent edition of that book, Free Radicals, Biology and Medicine, which was published in 2015, it may be there in the library. It is there in my personal library. So the free radical biology and medicine, every road was going to free radical. Every biologist, biochemist, biomedicine people, They were all talking of free radicals, free radicals, free radicals, and they were correlating it with aging, gerontology. They were correlating it with the loss of memory, Alzheimer. They were correlating it with muscular and nervous incoordination, Parkinsonism, and so on. Everybody started talking of free radicals. So what are these free radicals? I told you O2 is changed into O. O is a free superoxide and N is a free radical. Cl2 is not a free radical, but Cl is free radical. NO2 is not a free radical, but NO is free radical. A gentleman got Nobel Prize on the biological significance of nitric oxide molecules. He was awarded 2-3 years back. He was awarded Nobel Prize only for these. The free radical biology has evolved in a very very nice way. So first we should discuss these free radicals. Then we will talk of lipid peroxidation. The free radicals have got one very very dangerous, or you can say very interesting property, and that interesting property is a radical begets a radical. If the O has been generated, it will keep on generating O, 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 O. It is like a chain. If Cl has been generated, it will be Cl, 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 Cl. It is like a chain. So there is a saying you should always remember. I can ask you or explain what is a radical begets a radical. Just like जैसे कहते हैं ना the son begets father or father begets son. The radical begets a radical. Radical से radical ही पैदा होगा. तब तक पैदा होगा जब तक कि उस चेन को तोड़ नहीं दिया जाएगा. कौन तोड़ेगा उस चेन को? उसको रेडिकल स्कैवेंजर तोड़ेंगे. और उन रेडिकल स्कैवेंजर्स को हम क्या कहते हैं? उनको हम एंटीऑक्सीडेंट्स के नाम से जानते हैं. So Barry Halliwell, the Trevor F. Slater, the Recknagel R.O., Ashok Ghoshal, these are the pioneers. If you go to the archives, there are, if you go to my personal library and search those archival papers, you'll find that they are there. I have a collection of these papers. And in 70s, between 1970 and 80, everybody was talking of free radicals. Everyone, every laboratory was working. Me too started working on lipid peroxidation. I remember a long back, maybe 1980s. And the first paper that we published on lipid peroxidation was that these metallic elements, they induce lipid peroxidation lever, but the degree of the production of the lipid peroxidation by these metals is different. Then everybody, you see, every road goes to free radicals and every road goes to lipid peroxidation. And when we talk of lipid peroxidation, which I said, first we are to consider what are these free radicals. Free radical then are further classified the reactive species, reactive oxygen species, reactive nitrogen species, and so on. Even HOCl is a free radical. Right? Ozone is a free radical. Suzanne Solomon was awarded the Ashai Prize to suggest to the hypothesis that the reason behind ozone depletion is the formation of the superoxide anion. The ozone is changed into the molecular oxygen is changed into atomic oxygen. You know that O2 when joined with atomic oxygen O, it becomes O3, and when again this O3 is broken down, the O is liberated, and this O was found to be responsible for the thinning of the ozone layer. There was a lady, Suzanne, she was awarded a Asai Prize, which is equal to the Nobel Prize for this hypothesis. So it is not only in cell, outside the cell also these radicals are playing a havoc. They are disturbing it. And when we study these radicals and how they may be endogenously produced, there are different methods of production, right? They may be produced through abstraction, they may be produced through addition, they may be produced through subtraction. And I told you that two basic mechanisms, the Fenton reaction and the Haber-Bosch reaction, they play a very important role in the generation of these free radicals. Free radicals are in chemistry also. There are many reactions that lead to the generation of free radicals. These free radicals, they are very, very dangerous. Once they are formed, it is very difficult to take them out and to reverse the damage that they have caused in the cell. And the most important damage they cause to the cell is the peroxidation of polyunsaturated fatty acids. Somebody said, what is lipid peroxidation? Teppel defined it that it is the peroxidation of polyunsaturated fatty acids in the membrane. So we say no, it's not the lipid peroxidation, it is membranous lipid peroxidation. And for that, we will have to understand the structure of the membrane. We will have to study the structure of the biological membrane. Here, with biological membrane, I mean what is the structure of the plasma membrane, what is the structure of the mitochondrial membrane, the outer membrane and the inner membrane, because lipid peroxidation will be occurring at the level of the mitochondria. It will be occurring at the level of the microsomes. It will be, that is, at the level of the endoplasmic reticulum. It will be occurring at the level of the lysosomes. It will be occurring, you see, all these membranes are susceptible to this process of lipid peroxidation. Their PUFA, polyunsaturated fatty acids, you know the plasma structure of the plasma membrane through your biology background. Outer protein layer, extrinsic, intrinsic, and the inter membranous space, and that are having some cholesterol molecules, and they are having the fatty acids. And when these fatty acids, they are peroxidized, that process is known as lipid peroxidation. So there used to be a person, Teppel, A.O. Teppel, he defined what is lipid peroxidation. He said this is the peroxidation of the polyunsaturated fatty acids of the biological membranes, and this leads to what it is going to do to the cell. The cell becomes as if a balloon. You see, a balloon is very tight when you fill it with the air, but when the air leaks, the balloon becomes flaccid. So when the lipid peroxidation occurs, the cell becomes flaccid. And then there is another concept that enters into it, that is the membrane fluidity. The membrane loses its strength, the membrane loses its structure, and after losing it becomes flaccid. And when it becomes flaccid means it allows so many things to come in and it allows so many things to come out. So it becomes an irregular traffic of molecules. We call it as irregularities in molecular trafficking. Many molecules from extracellular space enter into the cell, and many molecules from the intracellular area start coming to the extracellular space. So the entire system, entire balance of the cell is lost, and that leads to, that will be leading to, we collective call it, and that will be leading to something like stress. The cell or the system is under stress, and this stress has been defined as the oxidative stress, the peroxidative stress, the nitrosative stress, and so on. And in this way, there emerges another science, very, very important science of stress medicine or stress biology. And there are now many, at the international level, there are many societies, Society for Free Radical Biology and Medicine, and there are journals especially devoted to the study of free radicals. Free Radical Biology and Medicine is a wonderful journal. So this is just to introduce you what we are going to discuss in coming lectures. This is a basic fundamental lecture on free radicals and lipid peroxidation. We shall discuss in more details in coming lectures. So study well, stay home. I hope you will enjoy this.